Hello there, and welcome to the Impact Zone podcast. We are back once more to talk TNA wrestling shenanigans, and we're back to the Bound for Glory build here today. On the way to Bound for Glory, we've got the addition of the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies confirmed for Bound for Glory this year. And I was talking a bit here and there about Rhino wanting Rhino to have something. And well, hey, look, they just decided they're going to put him in the Hall of Fame, which is, I think appropriate. The guy obviously might do a little bit more in professional wrestling, but he knows he's got to tie those boots up at some point soon. It is, he was wrestling in the 90s and I think maybe the late 80s. I'm not too sure. But yes, like he's been wrestling for a long time, same as PCOs, and there's a lot of other wrestlers that have been wrestling a long time. And they can still do some stuff here and there, but it is one of those things that it's hard to keep at that high level, and they've got to be sort of winding down their career naturally anyway, because well, you know that's kind of how it is. You kind of have this whole thing of having to put younger guys over so that they can get to become the stars of the show for the future. And Rhino, he's had a great career in TNA. I think his TNA run or his TNA runs have been the best runs that he's had. Maybe he's had a couple other decent-ish runs here and there, but I really think that if you compare, like, again, it's probably just because the fact that it's been one of the longest runs that he's had, like, all told, combined, so it's tough to sort of, not weigh that as, the heaviest, because he's probably been there the most out of anywhere he's been. Congrats for Rhino to be going into the Hall of Fame. Also going into the Hall of Fame, someone who's a little bit, I guess, to non-TNA fans, someone nobody probably would know very much about, Bob Ryder. But of course, us TNA fans know a lot about Bob Ryder. He was very influential and integral into starting TNA in the very early days. I think he was actually working with WCW in its very later days as well, and got to know Jeff Jarrett during his time there. So yeah. Also on the Countdown show, because the Hall of Fame inductions will also be on the Countdown show. They will have the Call Your Shot Gauntlet match. So I do believe, from what I'm remembering, that the Bound for Glory Countdown show, or Countdown whatever, a segment, will be 1 hour long too. I don't know whether they're going to have both the Hall of Fames and then the Call Your Shot, or the Call Your Shot then the Hall of Fames, or have one of the Hall of Fames and then have the Call Your Shot and then have the other one. Maybe, not too sure. We'll have to wait and see on that, I guess. But yes, that is all going down on the pre-show, or whatever you want to call it there. Which, funnily enough, which is crazy here, lets a whole bunch of matches that probably were just going to be on the pre-show onto the main show themselves. Spitfire versus Rosemary and Wendy Chu. They just announced this. They've built a little bit around this week. And when Rosemary and Wendy Chu have sort of tag teamed together and whatnot. And I was saying before, like, it was like, well, what are Spitfire doing before? And I was like, this is the first time we've probably seen them since, like, Victory Road. Like, they haven't done anything up until now. So, and perhaps that is due to hurricane shenanigans and whatnot. They probably were going to build this a bit more again. but Hurricane ruins everything apparently. But then again, they could have taken something here or something there or whatever, or done something else. I don't know, just to move things around, just so that they could have got this set up sooner or set up more clearly. In the build up here. As far as this one goes, I don't really see the point in. Don't even see the point in the tag team titles anymore. I've said that a few times, but honestly, like the point of changing the titles over is zero. But then again, the point of not changing the titles over is also zero. But then again, the thing is, it's like, well, you're gonna. Well, I don't know, but again, there is obviously potential to put the title on a NXT wrestler, uh, obviously, but are you actually going to pull that trigger? Like, like that's a pretty, like far-reaching trigger to pull in my opinion. I don't see it happening. I just really do not see it happening. It's not something that I would consider is like really logical, and I just don't even really see where Spitfire goes from here. Like again, like we said this before, there's hardly any other teams that are even in the Knockouts tag team division. Maybe Heather Reckless and Ash by Elegance, that's going to be it, and Wendy Chu and Rosemary. And I thought that Rosemary was going to be in a singles act for a little while, but maybe next year, I don't know. But yeah, like it is what it is, and they announced officially Speedball Bailey versus Vikingo. They were also hyping up Vikingo coming to Bound for Glory, and it was like, well, why hype it up? Like, and not like just announce the match. I don't know. Like, you just wait for the match to actually be announced. Like, I guess it was just because the fact that, again, it's one of those things that, again, the taping, people already knew the spoilers, etc. So it was like, well, we might as well hype it up and get some numbers out of it or whatever and that sort of thing. And, people kind of know about it anyway or whatever. I get that, I guess. So, but yeah, like, I still have the same problem with this match, and I still think I see it going the same way. I think Bailey's going to win this, even though I think Vikingo's a very talented wrestler, but just him coming into the company and there's like no real build to him winning it just doesn't make any sense for him to win this title. Maybe like I don't know whether he'll even be sticking around. Like he hasn't even turned up. Like again, like I said before. So it's like, well, how much can you? And maybe that's Hurricane related or whatever. I guess again, but I just want to say, hey, come on, you've got to if anyone's gonna put any stock in terms of the fans into this guy as far as being there on, a defense level basis of a title, they're not going to do it because they know that he's not, even though there have been people that have been there that have worked on a handshake agreement and done things. It's like, this doesn't really make much sense. I don't see why this is happening or whatever. Like, like some people make sense or some people can work within a story or within a direction if they're there for a short period of time or whatever it is, or even a moderate amount of time. But yeah, I don't see that with Vikingo. I think that he's like a one and done, which again I don't agree with, but this is what they've decided to do. I think that the match, I want to talk about the Speedball Bailey Leon Slater match. I think that match was really great. And I think, I think they should have just built to that, like, at Bound for Glory. That match at Bound for Glory probably would have kicked and probably would have done really well if it had been built to, like, over the next couple of weeks or something in some way. But yeah, like I get Vikingo's really good. I get that. I get everything that all the positives that Vikingo can bring, but it's just like, well, he hasn't really earned it, and we know that he's not probably not winning it, so people have no real like reason to care about this. It'll be a good match. That's about it. So yeah, I don't know about that one. Really weird. They're in this one. Anyway, have to move on because there's so much more to talk about, I guess, but only really two things, I guess. Josh Alexander versus Steve Macklin. Now, I'm really scratching my head on this one, guys. Now, I can't remember when Steve Macklin and Josh Alexander actually wrestled against each other for the first time. I can't remember what pay-per-view it was. I believe it was just after Alexander had come back um, at Bound for Glory, and then he went on to try to challenge. Or was it before? Oh no, it was after Slammiversary. Or was it after Slammiversary? God damn it! It's really tough to remember when these things happened. I think sometimes because yeah, Shelley and Aldous wrestled at Slammiversary. Then Josh came back. Then he had a match with Macklin, I think. And then he had his match with Shelley at Bound for Glory. Pretty sure. Um, like, these guys, they had a long story going, and they still kind of have a long story going, and they seem to be like eternal rivals, I guess. Kind of. That's kind of the thought here in some way, in some fashion. But this makes no sense to me. Like, it really makes no sense to me. Like, I thought 100% that just as I was watching the preview for next week's show, that I'd figured out who the team was that Josh Alexander and Judas Icarus, Travis Williams were going to face off against at Bound for Glory, because I was like, oh yeah, this is leading to a 6-man tag at Bound for Glory. Right, okay. Because it's all about the Northern Armory, and I was like, I do wish that, EY would bring back Team Canada and all this, or whatever, something. But it's probably not going to happen, but still, like, he'll find a team and they'll team and face each other. That seemed to be the story. It seemed to be the numbers advantage versus, the guys who are just trying to fight, but those guys will just have to come together and say, all right, well, we have to all fight together, and all for one, all for one, type thing. This makes absolutely no sense. What are Travis Williams and Judas Icarus doing on this? Like, I don't know. It just feels like a match that's going to be, heavily interrupted. I also remember now, Josh won the first match. To me, it's like, bro, I don't know. Like, I start to think about the future of, like, the world title picture, because that's where both of these guys are going. Same with a few other guys, like, that are on this upper card part. So the thing is, it's like, well, Hendry, about to say Hendry, dyslexiaing myself. Alexander has lost to Nemeth and Hendry. So it's not like he's going to face Hendry immediately after this. So there's not a lot of logic there in that. But still, you've got to look at that. Like, if you're looking at it like, well, this is, to try to rebuild Josh and all of this and whatnot in some way, well, yeah. I kind of think that in some ways, like, is to reignite that in some ways, and give him something to fight. But then again, I looked at Moose versus Santana the other way, because I was like thinking, well, this is for Santana, because Santana has to become like a made man and have to become one of the, the top guys in the company, But the problem there is, it's like, well, either way, even if Nemeth wins, which I don't think he's going to, um, you've still got a babyface at the top. So it's going to be really tough for another babyface to kind of get in there. Now, Joe Hendry has done that, but again, that's not, a traditional sort of thing that normally happens. Like it's very rare, and that's just due, for the most part, in part to the fans who have been chanting "We believe" and for Joe every single town and whatnot that they've gone to. And congrats to TNA for not, shooting themselves in the foot, and saying, "Oh well, we'll bury this guy, or we'll forget about it, or we'll ignore it." No, they went, "Holy crap, this guy's getting over," and went, "Okay, well, let's try and push him as hard as we can." Because he'll be money for us. So that's the right thing to do. Um, I could see this like going on again. So I could see that Macklin does win somehow, some way, or whatever, and then they have a rubber match because like rubber matches are just the best thing in the world, as I always say. Like it's one of those funny things that it's like, well, if you're not going to have a rubber match, like what are you doing? Like, you always need a rubber match. You always need that rubber match. It's one of the most important things in professional wrestling. So I don't know. We'll have to keep our eye on this one, though. I don't know. It's incredibly tough to think that Alexander won't be pushing towards that world title, and I still just don't think that, we talked about this a while back, but I still don't think that, like, we've talked about, like, one person thus far on this, card that's from NXT, which is, like, impressive in some ways, but also, like, wait, what? On a lot of other ways. So I kind of feel like there might be a few NXT stars in the Call Your Shot gauntlet. Maybe, but then again, it's like, well, you don't want too many because, it sort of degrades. So any other like surprise entrants are a little bit like, lesser than to a degree. Because again, like you can't rely on NXT to give you wrestlers. You've got to bring wrestlers from the indies up to that national, international level, so that you can make those wrestlers, into your homegrown sort of talent, and give them those opportunities that, to showcase, what they're about and what TNA, in theory is all about. And I think a lot of the performers that are here, in TNA on a every week basis, or every year basis, like you talk about some of the guys coming from NXT. It's great to see some of those guys, but you know I want to see more of the homegrown stars, and the same thing with like the ex WWE guys, like, or ex WCW, ECW guys. It's like, well, you've kind of had your time, to a degree, like, and now it's time to sort of try to grow the next crop of talent, not just take the spotlight for yourself, But they do that, so we've never had anything to really complain about. So, but it is one of those things where it's like, seeing PCO, it's like, well, he's really like getting on in years. Like I said before, it's like, well, how much longer can he go for? Who knows? Matt Cardona, he's an ex WWE guy, like, wouldn't be too bad if he's there for a short period of time or whatever it is, if he puts somebody over, but I don't think that he's going to be there for any real length of time. I think he's going to lose to PCO and then going to wander off again. So it's tough to see that. It's just like, well, what is this roster going to be, after this or after that? And we keep talking about whether Jordan's leaving or whether this person's leaving, and like they said that her contract expires like mid 2025, I think it was, or something like that. So that's not far away, but also a little bit further away than what a lot of people were saying or thinking or whatever. So, but still, I think like you start having to look at it like this is a wrap up of her time there to an extent. And the thing is, like, I kind of conflate Jordan and Marsha's rivalry to like Jordan and Perazzo's rivalry, except it's kind of like the other way around. Whereas like Jordan couldn't beat Perazzo, just couldn't beat Perazzo no matter what. It's like Marsha just couldn't beat Grace, just couldn't beat Grace. But now, like eventually somehow Grace found a way. And same thing here to an extent, maybe. I don't know. The main event has not changed too much, but they have added not a stipulation, but a special referee to the main event match, which is Frankie Kazarian, who will be officiating said match. Now, that makes me feel like there is lots of shenanigans going on here to an extent. Nemeth, one of those guys that, as I said, like same sort of thing, been to WWE. He didn't get his due in WWE, which sucks. But thing is, he did what he did in WWE, and he did well for himself to an extent, and he get to showcase what he can do. Hendry, clearly the future of the company, or at least for a short period of time, will be like the face of the company, and is certainly a future megastar. Kazarian, sort of, face of the history of TNA, one of the original sort of pillars of TNA, if you want to put it like that. The guy could have potentially gone to WWE, potentially, I guess, after kind of leaving AEW, but, it's like, I guess like he understands the position that he's in. Like, hey, I'm getting on in years. How many years have I got left? Not very many. How many, how many things can I do here? Not very many. It's time to start slowing down. Right? How do I really want to end my career? And how do I want to go out? How do I want to be remembered, etc.? Like that sort of thing. Like this is the sort of thing that you start doing. It does take a few years sometimes, and it is sometimes takes even longer than that. Look at PCO; he's been going way longer than a lot of people predicted that he could or would, and whatnot. So certain wrestlers, Sting, Undertaker, and perhaps to their own detriment, like kept going, but they kept going. So kudos to them in that way, because they did keep going, even in the face of people saying, "Oh, they probably shouldn't." Same with the Hardys; they were just saying this, this week and last week, I think it was, as well. That they're promoting that they were great, but that tense is wrong. They are great. They are still as good, and I do agree in some regards. Yes, they are still a great team in many regards, but I do think that their best days are behind them. But if they can showcase themselves in one last big, hurrah or whatever else in TNA and in WWE, it will remind people that they are just almost as good as what they were, and can still go and can still, put on a great show and steal the show. So, but anyway, I still don't think it really changes my perception of who should win here. Like you could, like I said before, maybe I'm not quite right, because it's like I kept saying like it's like they should delay it. But the problem with delaying it is it's really tough to delay these sorts of things, because I guess it's one of those things that you can't satisfy everyone and anyone sometimes, with no matter what you do, because if you don't pull the trigger, it's like everyone gets on and complains that you didn't pull the trigger. But if you pull the trigger, a lot of people will go out and complain that you crown somebody who, is quote unquote just a meme wrestler or whatever, or not ready for that spot, or perceived not to be ready for that spot, or whatever. I think Hendry, he's doing well. What is like this is we I think I tried to talk about this before, but what it takes to be the top guy doesn't always just come from the company. It's not just always the company pushing you into that main event scene. That's not what really gets you to be a main event guy. It's not really just giving somebody the title and saying, here you go, or whatever, or even pushing somebody into that main event picture. Yes, they've done that, with many wrestlers, but they've also taken on another role in doing media, in doing these other things, in doing social media, in doing all these interviews, in doing promotion and whatnot outside of TNA to bring the fans in, to get the people to tune in and to buy the shows. That's what a main eventer does. They draw the crowds. They're the attraction. They're the ones that people pay the money to see. Your Steve Austins, your Rocks, those sorts of people, your Hulk Hogans, and that sort of thing, that people pay to see those guys. People pay to see Joe Hendry. The people are absolutely on the Joe Hendry bandwagon and will pay to see him. The thing is, it's like you've got to find that space between giving them the payoff that they want, but dragging it out long enough so that you actually make a lot of money in doing it. Maybe this is the right time. I don't 1,000% know, because again, like we said with Joe Hendry, I think his contract is ending in 2025 or something like that, or whatever it was as well. So, and like again, I'm not I'm not one to ignore sort of not the obvious, but the obvious sort of things. But again, it's like one of those things that I have a big problem with, is that perception, or that idea that everyone will leave or everyone's going to WWE. Not necessarily. Certainly, probably Joe Hendry is, but still, you can't count your chickens till they're hatched type thing, because he might go, well, yeah, I'd love to come to WWE and all of this, but I live in England, so I might actually have to kind of move over here to actually make a lot of the dates or whatever, that because most of the dates are in the US, and that sort of thing, and it's a lot more work. It's not like like whereas TNA, you can say, okay, well, I'll take a couple of weeks off, or I'll go and do Eurovision, which he said he was going to do, and this and that. I can go and do this other thing, or I can go and do that other thing. WWE is extremely demanding when you're actually under contract with them and actually performing with them, especially when you're a really good attraction like Joe Hendry could be over there as well. Like, he can be an attraction literally anywhere now. I think, given the right time and the right story and all of that sort of stuff. So, again, like, it's one of those things that you've got to think ahead and say, oh, well, how do we please as many people as possible? We don't want to just dangle that carrot and dangle that carrot, but, we want people to feel like, yes, this is going to happen, but we want people to, not just feel like, oh man, we got ripped off or whatever and all of this from shenanigans. That's where I'm at with this. It's like, it feels very much like they have to have put Kazarian there for a reason in that title match. Like, what's going on? So is Nick Nemeth turning heel? I don't know. I mean, again, So, or is something else happening? What's going on? What is the things that's going on? Maybe I don't think Hendry's turning heel, but maybe like Nemeth and Nick Nemeth and Kazarian will have a program after this. I don't know. Again, maybe you can go back to Hendry and Kaz. I don't know. You could do that. I don't know. But again, like I still feel like if Nemeth loses, then you've got to start saying, well, what about his rematch clause? Unless you start saying, okay, well, let's build this to where it's like, his rematch clause is up for grabs or whatever. And again, it's like, well, how long is Nick Nemeth actually going to stick with TNA? He said he was initially going to only be there for like 10 days or something, or whatever it was. I don't know. I don't think that seems legit. Or maybe a month, I don't know. But yeah, like obviously that didn't pan out, and that did change. And I think he likes it there. But the thing is, it's like, well, where is this going? What's next for this? Like, it's not like I need to know. Well, I do, but like they need to know, right? Well, what's the next step? And we like, you can't just sit there and say, well, we'll keep going the way we're going. No, like it doesn't matter which one of these guys wins at the end of the day. You need to build people so that they are ready for whoever comes out at the end. And I think it's Hendry, in my opinion, because again, there just isn't a real world, in my opinion, that Nick Nemeth should win this match. That's just my way of looking at it, because it's like, well, what are you going to do with Nick Nemeth? Like, how much longer is he going to stick around? So you could just do so much more with so many other people that are on your roster that are, locked down or whatever for a decent period of time that, will continue this ride of where are we going next? Who's going to take that title off of Hendry? And or whatever, because Nemeth is, that guy is dependable and reliable at this point, and he's good at putting people over. I think, unfortunately, he's got that reputation. So it's like, well, it's not like he's going to stick around. Like after this is done, I really don't think that he's going to stick around. Like, what would be the incentive? Like, maybe he will, and I'll be wrong, but he will be severely in the same position for the most part that he was in, except for, he might actually be given more than 5 minutes of wrestling, to do on a weekly basis, whatever it is. So yeah, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess, at Bound for Glory. And we will have a quick, I guess, recap of anything new that does come up next week, because next week is the penultimate, the last TNA Impact before Bound for Glory, so we'll have to get on that one pretty quick. This one will be going out a bit slower as well. Again, it's one of those things that's often a bit busy sometimes, so we're trying to juggle things around to make sure that week will be as free as possible, but you never know, so have to wait and see how things go. But anyway, guys, hope you have enjoyed this one, and hope you will join me again in the next one.